Breaking news is shaking the world tonight. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has issued his most chilling warning yet. If Iran dares to cross Israel's red line, the response will be nothing short of a fierce, all-out strike. What does this mean for the Middle East? And could we be standing on the edge of a regional war? Stay with us, because what I'm about to share will leave you speechless. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most alarming statements to come out of the Middle East in recent years. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has once again placed Iran on direct notice. His message is blunt and powerful. If Tehran crosses what he calls Israel's red line, Israel will respond with overwhelming force. This isn't just a casual warning. It's a dramatic escalation that has the entire international community on edge. And tonight we are going to unpack what it means, why it matters, and how dangerously close we might be to witnessing a larger conflict. The phrase red line carries heavy weight in geopolitical language. It suggests that there is a final limit, a point of no return, beyond which retaliation is guaranteed. Netanyahu's choice of words signals that Israel sees a very specific set of actions from Iran, likely connected to its nuclear program, proxy militias, or aggressive regional maneuvers, as intolerable. If those actions occur, he has made it clear that Israel won't hesitate to strike. The question many are asking now is, has Iran already approached that line, or are we still in the realm of threats and deterrence? Over the next few sections, we will explore the background of this confrontation, the military and political stakes involved, and the chilling scenarios experts fear could unfold if tensions boil over. Buckle up, because this story is far from ordinary. It's one that could redefine the balance of power in the Middle East. To understand the severity of Netanyahu's threat, we need to take a closer look at the long and complicated history between Israel and Iran. These two nations have been locked in a Cold War for decades. Israel views Iran not only as a rival, but as an existential threat, mainly because of Tehran's pursuit of nuclear technology and its open hostility toward the Jewish state. Iranian leaders have, on multiple occasions, made inflammatory remarks about Israel's future, while simultaneously backing proxy groups across the region. These groups, like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza, have received financial support, weapons, and training from Iran, directly undermining Israel's security. For Netanyahu, the fear isn't just about Iran's rhetoric, it's about capability. If Iran were to cross the nuclear threshold or empower its allies to launch sustained attacks on Israel, Netanyahu believes Israel would be left with no choice but to act. That's why his warning is so chilling. It ties directly to Israel's survival. The red line, in this sense, is not just political theater. It represents a boundary between tolerable hostility and outright catastrophe. By putting Iran on notice, Netanyahu is sending a message not only to Tehran, but also to the world powers who continue to negotiate with Iran. His underlying message is simple: if diplomacy fails, Israel will act unilaterally. This raises the stakes enormously because unilateral action in the Middle East rarely stays contained. It almost always triggers a wider reaction. Let's now turn to what exactly this red line could mean. Netanyahu has been vague in his public statements, deliberately so, but analysts suggest it points to two major possibilities. First, Iran's nuclear program. For years, Israel has insisted that Iran must never be allowed to obtain nuclear weapons capability. While Tehran claims its program is for peaceful energy purposes, international inspectors and intelligence reports have repeatedly indicated otherwise. For Israel, the thought of a hostile neighbor with nuclear weapons is beyond unacceptable. If Iran is seen enriching uranium past a certain threshold or moving toward weaponization, that could be the red line Netanyahu is warning about. Second, The red line might involve Iran's use of regional proxies. Hezbollah, stationed just across Israel's northern border in Lebanon, is estimated to have over 100,000 rockets capable of striking Israeli cities. If Iran orders Hezbollah to unleash a major assault, or if it provides advanced missile systems that shift the balance of power, Israel may decide that's enough to justify preemptive action. The danger here is ambiguity. Iran may not know for sure what Israel considers intolerable, but that's by design. Strategic ambiguity can act as a deterrent, making adversaries think twice before escalating. However, it can also increase the risk of miscalculation. If Tehran underestimates Netanyahu's resolve, it could stumble across the line without realizing it. And in such a scenario, Israel has promised that the response will not be symbolic. It will be fierce, overwhelming, and immediate. Whenever we talk about Israel striking Iran, we must consider the scale of what such an operation would involve. Israel has one of the most advanced militaries in the world, particularly in the fields of air power, cyber warfare, and missile defense. Its F-35 fighter jets, equipped with cutting-edge technology, could potentially target Iranian facilities deep within its territory. Cyber capabilities, proven in past incidents like the Stuxnet virus, could disrupt Iranian infrastructure in devastating ways. Add to this Israel's long-range missiles and elite intelligence network, and the threat of a powerful strike becomes very real. But military action isn't without consequences. Iran has its own arsenal of ballistic missiles capable of reaching Israeli territory. Moreover, Iran's vast network of proxies, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to militias in Iraq and Syria, could be unleashed in response. A single strike by Israel could spark retaliations on multiple fronts, overwhelming Israel's defenses and plunging the region into chaos. This is why Netanyahu's warning feels like a dangerous gamble. While Israel may be confident in its military edge, Iran has the ability to cause serious damage in return. The real fear is not whether Israel can strike, but whether it can manage the aftermath of such a strike. Wars rarely follow predictable patterns, and once the first missile flies, controlling escalation becomes nearly impossible. The world has seen time and again how quickly a localized confrontation in the Middle East can spiral into something far more devastating. Now let's consider the international reaction. Netanyahu's remarks are not made in a vacuum. They come at a time when the United States, the European Union, and other global powers are still trying to keep diplomatic channels with Iran open. The United States, in particular, has always walked a fine line, supporting Israel as its closest ally in the region, while also trying to prevent a catastrophic war. If Israel were to strike Iran, Washington would face an immediate dilemma: back its ally unconditionally or try to restrain it to avoid all-out conflict. Russia and China also play important roles here. Both have closer ties with Iran than with Israel, and both are permanent members of the UN Security Council. They could view an Israeli strike as an unacceptable provocation, further straining already fragile global relations. The Middle East has long been a battleground for proxy competition between great powers, and this situation could accelerate that rivalry. Meanwhile, regional states like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Egypt are watching closely. Though they share Israel's concerns about Iran's growing power, they are wary of being dragged into a destructive war. Publicly, they may call for restraint, but privately, many would quietly welcome any setback to Iran's influence. This creates a dangerous dynamic where public diplomacy and private desires don't align. In short, Netanyahu's threat is not just about Israel and Iran. It is a warning shot that reverberates across the entire globe, with implications far beyond the Middle East. At this point, you may be wondering, is Netanyahu bluffing, or is he deadly serious? The truth is, Netanyahu has a long history of saber rattling when it comes to Iran. For years, He has been one of the loudest voices warning about the dangers of Iran's nuclear ambitions. Skeptics argue that this is part of his political strategy, using Iran as a looming threat to rally domestic support and pressure international actors. They suggest his latest comments may be another attempt to push the US and Europe into taking a tougher stance on Tehran. But dismissing this as pure bluffing would be risky. Israel has acted unilaterally in the past when it felt its survival was at stake. In 1981, it bombed Iraq's Osirak nuclear reactor. In 2007, it carried out a similar strike in Syria. In both cases, Israel acted without international approval, believing it was protecting its future. Netanyahu's warning should therefore be taken seriously because history shows Israel is willing to act alone if pushed. The danger, however, lies in the unpredictability of timing. Netanyahu may not want a full-scale war, but if Iran makes one wrong move, he may feel politically and strategically cornered into striking. And once that happens, the decision will be irreversible. That's why experts say the situation is so volatile right now. Bluff or not, Netanyahu has drawn a line in the sand, and the closer Iran gets to it, the greater the risk of a devastating miscalculation. To better grasp the potential impact, let's play out a hypothetical scenario. Imagine Iran crossing the red line, whether by ramping up uranium enrichment, testing new missile systems, or green lighting Hezbollah to attack northern Israel. Within hours, Israel would likely launch a series of preemptive strikes. Fighter jets would head eastward, targeting nuclear facilities, military bases, and command centers deep in Iranian territory. Cyber units would unleash digital attacks on Iran's infrastructure, crippling communication and power grids. Iran would respond almost immediately. Ballistic missiles would rain down on Israeli cities, while Hezbollah's rockets would create havoc along Israel's northern border. Hamas could also open a front from Gaza, creating a multi-directional conflict. Israel's Iron Dome defense system would intercept many rockets, but not all. Civilian casualties would be inevitable. Meanwhile, oil prices would skyrocket as global markets react to the chaos. Shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz, a vital artery for world energy supplies, could be threatened, sending shockwaves through the global economy. The United States might be forced to intervene militarily, while Russia and China would increase their support for Tehran. What began as a single strike could escalate into a regional war involving multiple nations. This is the nightmare scenario experts fear. It's not just about two countries clashing, it's about triggering a chain reaction that engulfs the entire region. Netanyahu's words, therefore, are not just rhetoric, they represent a potential flashpoint for one of the most dangerous conflicts of our time. Beyond the geopolitical calculations, we must also consider the human cost of such a confrontation. Wars are often discussed in terms of strategy, weapons, and politics, but at the heart of every conflict are ordinary people. In Israel, families would once again rush to bomb shelters, living under the constant fear of rocket fire. Daily life would be disrupted, with schools closed, businesses shuttered, and cities bracing for impact. The psychological toll of such conditions cannot be underestimated. On the Iranian side, civilians would face devastating consequences as Israeli airstrikes target military and strategic sites. While governments plan wars with maps and data, the reality on the ground is destroyed homes, injured children, and communities torn apart. In Lebanon, where Hezbollah operates from populated areas, civilians would likely be caught in the crossfire, suffering the consequences of proxy warfare. Humanitarian organizations warn that even a short conflict could displace tens of thousands of people. Hospitals, already under pressure, would struggle to cope with the influx of wounded. Aid corridors would be hard to maintain in an environment of constant bombardment. The refugee crisis in the Middle East, already immense, would deepen further. This is why many voices, from NGOs to religious leaders, are calling for restraint. They understand that once the cycle of violence begins, it is the people, not the politicians or generals, who pay the highest price. Netanyahu's warning may sound like political theater, but its consequences would ripple through countless innocent lives. Let's step back and analyze the psychology behind Netanyahu's statement. Leaders often use strong language to project strength, deter adversaries, and reassure their citizens. By publicly threatening Iran, Netanyahu positions himself as the guardian of Israel's security, showing both his people and his enemies that he will not waver in the face of danger. This is a classic example of deterrence theory. By making the threat of force credible, a leader hopes to prevent conflict rather than cause it. However, deterrence is a double-edged sword. If your opponent doubts your resolve, the threat fails. If your opponent takes it too seriously, they may respond preemptively to avoid being struck first. In other words, deterrence creates a tense standoff where both sides are on hair, trigger alert. That's what makes this situation so volatile. For Iran, Netanyahu's words could be seen as provocation. Rather than back down, Tehran might double down to show it cannot be intimidated. For Israel, any sign of weakness could embolden its enemies. This creates a dangerous feedback loop where each side escalates to avoid appearing vulnerable. The psychological game here is as important as the military one. Both nations are trying to convince the other that they are ready to go all the way, even if neither truly wants war. But when pride politics and national survival are at stake, logic often gives way to emotion. And in the Middle East, emotion has a history of igniting conflicts that logic cannot contain. As we bring this analysis to a close, it's clear that Netanyahu's warning is more than just a headline. It's a pivotal moment in global politics. By declaring that Israel is prepared for a fierce strike if Iran dares to cross the red line, he has raised the stakes in one of the world's most volatile regions. Whether bluff or reality, the statement forces everyone, from Tehran to Washington, from Moscow to Riyadh, to consider the possibility of a war that could reshape the Middle East. What happens next depends on choices made in the coming weeks and months. Will Iran test the limits, continuing its nuclear program and backing its proxies? Will Israel act preemptively, unwilling to wait until it's too late? Or will diplomatic efforts succeed in cooling tempers before they boil over? These are the questions dominating the minds of leaders, analysts, and ordinary citizens alike. One thing is certain: the margin for error is razor thin. A single miscalculation, a single strike too far, could unleash consequences no one can fully control. That's the terrifying reality behind Netanyahu's words. They are not just meant for Iran, but for the entire world, to remind us all how fragile peace in the Middle East truly is. As we've seen, the stakes are enormous: military devastation, humanitarian crisis, global economic shocks, and the risk of a regional war spiraling out of control. This is why Netanyahu's warning demands our attention, and why the world must watch every move in this dangerous standoff.